Hi, scholars. Welcome back. For the next 4 or 5 weeks, each week we'll be taking a look at a different conflict throughout history. World War I, the Holocaust, World War II. We might do Civil War. We'll see how much time we have left. But this week we will be talking about World War I. All right, so that's what this video is about. It's World War I, and let's go ahead and get started. All right, so at the end of this video, what you should be able to get is you should be able to explain the 5 W's. Who, what, when, where, why. And then at the end, you will be writing a raft essay, and I will explain in another video what that is. All right, so for this, I'm just going to explain World War I, and by the end of this video, you should be able to know who, what, when, where, why about World War I. All right, before we get started, we need to cover 3 vocabulary words. First vocabulary word is alliance. An alliance is an agreement between 2 or more countries to have each other's back or to take care of each other. It's kind of like an alliance is an agreement between 2 people, 2 friends, 2 countries to take care of each other. An example sentence: countries formed alliances during the war in case they were attacked. Okay? Second vocabulary word, nationalism. Nationalism is strong pride or love in one's nation. An example sentence: our country showed a lot of nationalism after September 11th. So it's when somebody in a country shows a lot of love, a lot of pride for their country. They're proud to be from that country. They're proud to be, uh, they love their country. They'll do anything for their country. That's nationalism. And then the third vocabulary word is civilians, a person who is not active in the military. So really somebody who is not currently in the military, somebody who is not a soldier, somebody who's not in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, anything like that. Just regular people, not soldiers, not airmen, not Marines, not, okay? The civilians watch the soldiers march in the parade. All right, so now let's get started with World War One. It went from 1914 to 1918, so it was a 4 year. It lasted about 4 years, and it was the Allied powers versus the Central powers. So let me kind of explain who the Allied powers are and the Central powers are. So you can see the ones in this orangish color are the Central powers. The main ones that you have to know from the Central powers are Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. Now, the Allies are countries like the ones in purple: France, United Kingdom, Russia, plus the United States. The United States would join on the side of the Allies in 1917. That's important. So you just know it's between these 2 sides. All right, so it was fought in Europe. U.S. joins the Allied powers in 1917. U.S. spends 1 year fighting. The U.S. helps the Allied powers defeat the Central powers. And what you have to know about World War I is that that sets the stage for World War II. All right, so let's go back to the beginning on how this starts. It starts with imperialism, and we've already talked about imperialism earlier in the year. Probably the best example that we have of imperialism that we've studied is, if you remember, the Scramble for Africa. The Scramble for Africa was when large European countries like Spain, Portugal, Italy, Great Britain, France, Germany took over smaller, weaker parts of Africa, um, and controlled them, right? Um, However, so that's what we talked about earlier in the year. Now, there was also imperialism in Europe, where larger, more powerful European countries took over and controlled weaker, smaller European countries. And the one that we're going to focus on right now is one of the stronger countries was Austria-Hungary, and they kind of took over this little country called Serbia. And as you can see, they're right next to each other. So Austria-Hungary takes over Serbia. Let me kind of show you. All right, so Austria-Hungary takes over Serbia. Now, the leader of Austria-Hungary, Franz Joseph, was old. He was getting old. He knew he was going to die. And the one that was going to take his place was his nephew named Franz Ferdinand. But before we get to that, let's talk about nationalism, how nationalism figures into this. So remember, we said nationalism is love of one's country, pride in one's country. Now, Austria-Hungary, they showed nationalism because they were proud that they were powerful enough to take over Serbia. They knew that they were strong, they were powerful, and they were going to take Serbia because it was right next to them, and they could do that. Now, nationalism could also be seen in Serbia because it made the Serbian people angry that their country was being taken over by someone else. So when you get this nationalism between these two countries, you know it's going to lead to conflict, right? You know it's going to lead to some type of war, some type of disagreement. And that's exactly what happens. Let's start with that nephew that I talked about earlier, Franz Ferdinand. He was prepared to become the future leader of Austria-Hungary. So he decides, let's have a parade in Serbia, this country that we just took over. Let's have a parade. Let's show them how strong we are. Let's try to make friends with these people that we've just taken over in Serbia. And here is an actual picture of him and his wife getting ready to go on that parade, right? Now, on the other side, in Serbia, you have this guy named GAVRILO Princip. He's a Serbian civilian. He wasn't in the army. He wasn't in the military. He was just a regular guy who he and his friends decided, let's watch this parade. Is that all they were going to do? They were just going to watch? Unfortunately, no. Gavrilo Princip and his friends decide that when Franz Ferdinand and his wife get near them, whoever has a chance is going to shoot him and kill him. They get near Gavrilo Princip and he shoots him and kills Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie. All right. So now that's the conflict. That's kind of what starts it. This is the event that starts World War I, the assassination of Franz Ferdinand. Well, you're starting to think, well, how does the United States get involved in this if this took place between two countries that at the time we didn't really care about? I'll talk about that later. All right, so what happens, this brings us to our second vocabulary word, which is alliances. Alliances begin forming. And this is a very simple way of thinking about it. It's a little bit more complicated, but basically this is what happens. Serbia, we killed your leader, get out of our country, right? That's why they killed Franz Ferdinand, because they didn't like the fact that Austria-Hungary was in their country. Well, Austria-Hungary isn't very happy with that. How dare you kill our leader? Prepare to fight. We're much stronger. We're much more powerful than you. And since you killed our future leader, you are going to have to pay the consequences. Well, one of Serbia's friends was Russia. And basically, Russia tells Austria, stay away from our friend Serbia, or you'll have to deal with us. Then Germany hears about this. Germany is friends with Austria-Hungary. Germany says, oh yeah? Or else what? We're going to help Austria-Hungary by attacking France. I know that's kind of weird. You would think Germany would attack Russia. And they eventually do, but they also decide they're going to attack France because they know France is a friend of Russia. France basically says, what did we do? Why are we being attacked? Great Britain joins in, and they're friends with France, they're friends with Russia, and they're like, leave France alone, Germany. And Germany basically says, we'll fight all of Europe if we have to. And 3 years pass, so war starts. 3 years go by. Finally, the U.S. gets involved. All right, I guess we'll get involved and help defeat Germany. So this is kind of what happened, if you want to think about this. But you can see how alliances were forming, how the ones in purple became the Allies. The ones in red were the Central Powers. And that's this map right here, including the United States, right? So that's basically how it happens. Because Austria-Hungary, their leader, or their future leader, was attacked by Serbia. Russia is friends with Serbia. They tell Austria-Hungary to Austria. Back to this, right? You kind of have the idea. Everybody goes against each other. The Allies wins. Nothing much happens for 3 years. U.S. gets involved. Allies win. Then at the end of the war, after the U.S. gets involved and the war is over, Germany is punished for starting a war. This war. They punish them by fining them a lot of money. Germany has to pay for a lot of the war damages. Things get really bad economically in Germany. Their economy is bad. Things get really bad. However, there is one soldier from Austria who is upset about what happened to Germany after the war. This one soldier vows to get revenge. So he becomes powerful. He becomes powerful in German politics. Eventually, he becomes the leader of Germany. And I'm talking about this guy. You may not recognize him right here because this is his picture from World War I. He was a soldier in World War I. He becomes powerful and becomes the leader of Germany. His name is Adolf Hitler, who I'm sure you've all heard about, and he vows to get revenge. All right. So that kind of ends World War I. And like I said earlier, that World War I leads to World War II. Okay? So that's the video. I hope it made sense. I hope it was clear. If you have any questions, please let me know on Google Classroom, the same way you have asked several other times.